Hi, I am Mike Hills. I have been modelling model railways since a very young age. I construct all my layouts, structures and buildings from styrene sheet, plasticard or similar. In this video I take you through the construction of a row of terrace houses, utilising the methods used to construct the structures on my layout Hillsdon. There are many more aids for scratch building now available, which did not exist when I started the layout over 30 years ago. I hope you find this video of interest. Well, where do you begin with scratch building? First, choose what you wish to build. Draw a scale drawing of the building. Main sources of information are available to the modeller on the internet, from Google Earth to estate agents. The example I am building was taken from an estate agent's details. I also undertake drawings of the various doors and windows required for the project to aid in the construction. Before commencing the proper build, I often build a full-size mock-up of the structure, placing it on the layout in its intended position. Leave it in place for a few days to ensure you are happy that it fits in with the landscape. I must admit I have started buildings and scrapped them halfway through the build. A mock-up would have saved many wasted hours. In my builds I usually use 40 thou plasticard for base, internal walls and floor, and any external walls without openings. Walls with openings I utilise 20 thou plasticard. After drawing out the various wall requirements for the build on plain 40 and 20 thou plasticard as required. For this demonstration I am cutting 40 thou plasticard for the base, internal walls and floors. To cut plasticard you need a sharp craft knife and a steel rule. Carefully score along the lines to be cut. Carefully bend the sheet along the scored lines to break out the individual pieces. Carefully cut out the door and window openings using a sharp craft knife and steel rule. For this project I have used embossed plasticard 2mm stone courses. After marking out to the required sizes, which should be 1mm longer in length than the sides they are overlaying to allow for the wall joints. Score and break out as detailed previously. Carefully create a 45 degrees chamfer to the ends using sandpaper. Lightly score the rear face of the embossed sheet with a craft knife. Lightly sand the rear faces of both the embossed layer and the core layer. Using Humbrol polystyrene cement in a tube, spread evenly over the rear face of the embossed wall covering. Carefully laminate the two sheets together. Repeat for all the external wall sections. Carefully cut out the window openings in the embossed cladding. File and trim as necessary. The sills and lintels are constructed from 20 by 10 thou microstrip. 1 row for the sills and 2 rows for the lintels, all applied with MechPack liquid poly. When fully dry, they are all trimmed to length with a sharp craft knife. Rub down the microstrip overlays with fine sandpaper. Prior to window and door installation, paint the window and door openings with appropriate stone colour. This drawing shows the various layers required to construct a panelled door. Mark out on plain plasticard the various layers and carefully cut out with a sharp knife. Using MechPack or similar, laminate the various layers together. Add 20 by 10 microstrip to form the horizontal head to the door. Apply plastic glaze to the rear of the door. Basic construction of the door is now complete. Carefully paint the door and frame in your required colours. Drawing detailing the window types required for the project. Window construction sequence from left to right. 1. Cut basic frame shape from 10 thou plasticard. 2. Plastic glaze is then added to the rear of the basic frame. 3. Glazing bars added using 10 by 20 thou microstrip. Finally, paint the finished windows in appropriate colours for the project. First, remove excess paint from the door and window frames to allow adhesive to bond better during installation. Similarly, remove excess paint from the rear of the walls. Fashion windows to the openings and glue in place with MechPack. Continue to install all doors and window frames to all sides of the build. Now that all the windows, doors, etc. have been added to the walls, I now construct the main shell of the building. Please note, if you want to add curtains to the windows in your build, then these should have been incorporated when adding the windows as you will no longer have access once the shell is complete. First, join one end wall to one of the long sides. This is followed by the floor, and then the second end wall to form a three-sided box. During the build, you may have to trim some of the interior walls and floors to achieve a proper fit. Next, I add the internal partition walls. Please note these are only half width, as there is a longitudinal central partition to add. The first row of internal partition walls is followed by the central longitudinal partition. The remaining cross-dividing walls are now added. Some trimming may be required to allow them to fit. Partway through, I have to adjust the position of these walls as they conflicted with the doors and window openings. Now the final external wall is now fixed in place. Finally, the false ceiling is added to complete the shell construction. As the internal walls are no longer accessible with the ceiling added, Humbrol polycement in a tube is applied to these walls. For this particular build, the chimneys were created as solid blocks. The chimney's basic shape uses 40 thou plain styrene. Layers of 40 thou styrene are then bonded together to form the overall thickness of the chimney. Sand and file to finish. Add embossed sides as per main wall construction. These should be 1 mm wider than the basic shape. Chamfer sides as before and then bond to the basic shape. Trim and rub down as required. As I created a flat ceiling to accommodate the positioning of the chimneys, we now need to create the roof slope. On this model I cut triangular supports for the roof structure, 2 per set of chimneys, all from 40 thou styrene sheet. These were glued into place with the chimneys attached. Normally I cover the roof with just 2 single pieces of styrene. However, in this build the position of the chimneys has meant adopting another method. In this particular scenario I adopted a jigsaw pattern, applying smaller panels between the chimneys. Apply filler to any gaps and rub down. It was a lot more work, but in my opinion it worked well. It may look a bit of a mess, but remember that there are still the roof slates to be fixed. First, I create a sheet of slates. Taking a 10th sheet of styrene, a grid of 3mm wide by 4mm long slates is scribed onto the styrene sheet. Split into strips. These form the rows of slates. Apply the strips to the roof, commencing at the eaves. Fix in place with Metpack or similar. Ensure fully secure on all sides. Apply the subsequent strips lapped 50% with the previous. Complete the whole roof. Trim the edges and ridge. And finally apply microstrip of appropriate size as a flashing around the chimneys. To finish the build, I added a fascia board of appropriate width of microstrip. Half round gutters were then added using 60 thou half round section from evergreen. Downpipes of 40 thou rod section from Slaters. Chimney pots constructed of plastrut 2mm diameter tube, cut to length, glued in place and flaunched with appropriate filler.